When someone with an avoidant attachment style suddenly pulls away, goes silent, or disappears without warning, it's easy to blame yourself. You start wondering if you said the wrong thing, if you weren't enough, or if they simply stopped caring. But the reality is much more complicated than that. In many cases, they don't leave because they feel nothing. They leave because what they're feeling has become too overwhelming. This is something many people misunderstand. For an avoidant, being emotionally vulnerable isn't just uncomfortable, it feels unsafe. Their entire way of coping has been built around protecting themselves from emotional pain. Real closeness can feel like losing control, and opening their heart can feel like exposing themselves to something they aren't prepared to survive. So when emotions become intense, they instinctively retreat. They shut down, create distance, and disappear into their own world. What often goes unnoticed is that their withdrawal doesn't mean there's nothing happening inside. It's usually the opposite. They're emotionally overloaded. The intensity of the connection reaches a level they don't know how to process, so their nervous system tells them to escape. Think of it like a storm beneath a calm ocean. On the outside, everything looks quiet. No messages, no calls, no effort. But underneath, there's fear, conflict, longing, and emotional chaos. If they could put those feelings into words, many would admit something like, "I care about you so much that it scares me." That idea can sound completely backwards. Most people naturally believe that if someone truly loves you, they'll move closer instead of pulling away. And for emotionally secure people, that's usually true. But avoidant individuals often learn through painful experiences that closeness eventually leads to hurt, rejection, disappointment, or losing themselves. Because of those experiences, love itself becomes something their mind labels as dangerous. This is why their disappearing act can sometimes be a twisted expression of how much the relationship matters. Instead of handling the discomfort of deep emotions, they retreat to calm themselves. Most aren't even fully aware that's what they're doing. They've spent years building emotional walls, convincing themselves they don't need anyone. Then someone enters their life and reaches places they've kept hidden for years. Rather than stepping into that connection, they instinctively hit the escape button. Emotional maturity means looking beyond what you immediately see. If you judge only the silence, you'll probably assume it means indifference. But when you understand attachment patterns, you begin to recognize that silence can also belong to someone overwhelmed by emotions they've never learned to manage. That's one reason many avoidants eventually return. Distance doesn't always erase what they feel. Even after they've disappeared, the connection often stays with them. They think about you during quiet moments. Your presence lingers in their mind, even inside the very distance they created to feel safe. Unfortunately, by the time they finally work through those emotions, you've often started healing from the hurt they caused. While they were protecting themselves from feeling too much, you were learning that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's inability to stay. So when someone who once felt deeply connected suddenly disappears, ask yourself a different question. Is this truly rejection, or is it fear controlling their actions? Sometimes their silence isn't saying, "I don't love you." Sometimes it's silently admitting, "I have feelings for you that I don't know how to handle." Some of the strongest emotions are hidden inside the loudest silence. If you understand what's happening beneath the surface, you'll see that disappearance can reveal truths that words never could. You've probably seen another pattern too. They vanish for weeks or months. Then, just as you're beginning to move forward, they suddenly appear again. Maybe it's a short text saying, "Hope you're doing well." Maybe they send a meme, react to one of your posts, or quietly watch your stories without saying anything meaningful. Naturally, you wonder why they chose this moment. For many avoidants,
This is their version of saying, "I've been thinking about you." Direct vulnerability feels far too risky. Speaking openly about emotions feels like giving up control. So instead of expressing themselves clearly, they communicate indirectly through small digital gestures and subtle attempts at reconnecting.
Those tiny interactions often carry more meaning than people realize. A one-word message, a random reaction, or checking your stories may seem insignificant, but for someone who fears emotional exposure, those actions can feel enormous. They're carefully testing the connection. They're quietly asking, "Are you still there? Would you push me away if I came closer?" Inside them, two opposing forces are constantly fighting. One side says to keep their distance. The other still wants connection. Instead of choosing either extreme, they offer a breadcrumb, just enough contact to feel connected without becoming emotionally exposed. This is the contradiction that defines avoidant attachment. They deeply want closeness, yet they fear everything that comes with it. So they create controlled forms of contact that allow them to stay emotionally tethered while protecting themselves from feeling overwhelmed. These behaviors usually begin long before you ever met them. Somewhere along the way, they learned that vulnerability wasn't safe. They associated intimacy with being abandoned, controlled, or emotionally consumed. As adults, those old lessons continue shaping their relationships. Love awakens longing, and longing immediately awakens fear. To manage that fear, they offer affection in carefully measured amounts that feel emotionally survivable. From a psychological perspective, this resembles what's known as protest behavior. These are attempts to restore connection without openly addressing the emotional distance. Their small check-ins aren't always manipulation. Often they're ways of calming their own anxiety while staying behind emotional walls. In their own quiet language, they're saying, "I still feel something, but I'm afraid to say it directly." At the same time, it's important to remember that understanding someone's fears doesn't mean sacrificing your own emotional needs. It isn't your responsibility to interpret every hidden signal or carry the relationship by yourself. You have to ask whether these small moments are truly enough for the kind of relationship you want. Because while breadcrumbs can create hope, they can also keep you trapped. If someone only offers occasional pieces of connection and you're always there to accept them, they may never feel the need to build something deeper. Over time, those tiny gestures become replacements for genuine intimacy, leaving you emotionally hungry while believing you're being fed. The truth is that many of those breadcrumbs do mean they still care. But caring alone isn't enough. Unless they're willing to face their fears, communicate honestly, and step fully into the relationship, those quiet signals remain exactly what they are, faint echoes of feelings that never become the open, consistent connection both people deserve. Eventually, the person who only reaches for you from a distance has to make a choice. They either step into the openness of a real relationship, or they watch you leave the uncertainty behind. Have you ever noticed how an avoidant often comes back when you finally stopped expecting it? After days, weeks, or even months of silence, they suddenly appear with a short message, a random question, or a casual check-in. They don't return with a heartfelt confession or complete honesty. Instead, it's something small that leaves you wondering why they're back. Most people assume they simply remembered you, but that's rarely the full story. In many cases, they never stopped thinking about you in the first place. What feels like distance to you often becomes endless mental replay for them. They think about the relationship repeatedly, revisit old conversations, and imagine different outcomes. The difference is that instead of expressing those feelings, they bury them. They withdraw because that's the only way they know how to manage emotions that feel too overwhelming. This is one of the hardest things to understand about avoidant attachment. Love doesn't register as comfort inside their nervous system. It often registers as danger. The stronger the emotional bond becomes, the louder their internal alarm sounds. Their instinct isn't to move closer, it's to create distance so they can regain a sense of control. The silence you experience isn't empty, it's filled with conflict. And something unexpected happens once you stop chasing them. When your messages stop, when your attention disappears, that silence becomes even louder for them. They may look perfectly fine from the outside, but internally, they're wrestling with thoughts they can't seem to quiet. Eventually, that pressure reaches a point where it becomes harder to stay away than to reach out. That's when the text arrives. Maybe they ask how you've been. Maybe they react to something you posted. It seems spontaneous, but it usually isn't. That one message often comes after countless internal debates about whether they should contact you at all. Many avoidants convince themselves that distance somehow protects love instead of damaging it. They tell themselves they're doing the right thing by staying away. Yet if you genuinely mattered to them, you don't simply disappear from their mind. You become an unfinished chapter they keep returning to. They replay conversations they'll never have. They imagine seeing you again. Even while pretending they've moved on, part of them is still emotionally connected. When they return, it doesn't necessarily mean they've solved what caused them to leave. Often it simply means avoiding you became more painful than facing a small amount of vulnerability. For a brief moment, their longing becomes stronger than their fear. Even then, honesty rarely comes first. Instead of saying, "I was scared and I missed you," they test the waters. They send subtle signals and hope you'll carry the emotional conversation for them. That's why it's important not to mistake someone's return for genuine change. Being physically present isn't the same as being emotionally available. Lasting relationships require clarity, accountability, consistency, and growth. Ask yourself an honest question. Are they coming back because they're truly ready to build something different? Or are they simply trying to quiet the discomfort their own silence created? Missing someone and being emotionally prepared for them are not the same thing. One eases loneliness. The other accepts the responsibility that real love requires. Just because someone comes back doesn't automatically mean they're capable of staying. And just because they think about you doesn't always mean they know how to love you in a healthy way. Real love isn't measured by how often someone returns. It's measured by whether they're willing to become someone who can consistently show up. Without meaningful change, the relationship simply repeats itself. Healthy love doesn't survive on endless cycles. It grows through conscious choices made over and over again. There's another moment that reveals what's happening beneath an avoidant's calm exterior. Mention someone else in your life, a coworker, a friend, or even a stranger who complimented you, and watch carefully. Sometimes you'll notice the smallest shift, a tense jaw, a quick glance away, stiff shoulders. Then almost immediately they hide it behind indifference. They laugh it off, change the topic, pretend nothing happened. Maybe they casually respond, "That's nice," as if they couldn't care less. But something did happen. Jealousy quietly surfaced. And for someone with avoidant attachment, jealousy can reveal more than almost any other emotion because it exposes the attachment they're trying so hard to hide. People don't become protective over things that hold no value to them. Jealousy only appears where emotional investment already exists. So when an avoidant briefly reveals possessiveness before covering it up, they're unintentionally admitting that you matter more than they'll comfortably acknowledge. Psychologically, jealousy is the brain reacting to a possible loss. Whether it's attention, affection, or connection, the nervous system treats that possibility as a threat. Someone with secure attachment might openly admit, "I felt uncomfortable hearing that." An avoidant usually can't. Admitting jealousy would also mean admitting emotional need,
and emotional need often carries deep shame for them.
Instead, they suppress it. They intellectualize it. They minimize the situation.
They may criticize the person you mentioned or dismiss the whole conversation as unimportant. Those reactions aren't always about the other person. They're attempts to restore emotional distance inside themselves. Yet beneath that calm surface, their mind keeps replaying the possibility of losing you. The harder they try not to care, the more persistent those feelings become.
Jealousy exposes something deeply human. No matter how independent someone appears, nearly everyone wants to matter. Everyone wants to feel chosen. Avoidants often build an identity around complete self-sufficiency, but jealousy creates cracks in that identity. It quietly reminds them that connection still affects them. If they're willing to recognize those feelings without shame, real growth becomes possible. The moment someone can honestly admit, "I'm afraid of losing you because you matter to me," they're moving toward emotional maturity. Awareness comes before lasting change. If you ever notice those subtle signs of jealousy, don't use them as proof that you've won or that you finally have power over them. Pointing it out aggressively usually pushes them further into defensiveness. Instead, stay calm. Let the moment pass. If the relationship feels emotionally safe enough, bring it up gently later. You might simply say, "I noticed things felt a little different when I mentioned my coworker. How did that feel for you?" You're not accusing them. You're inviting honesty. Healthy attachment doesn't mean never feeling jealous. It means learning to face those feelings with openness instead of hiding behind distance. Whether they choose that path is entirely up to them. Jealousy can become the beginning of self-awareness, or it can become another reason to retreat. You can't make that decision for them. What you can decide is whether those hidden feelings eventually become genuine commitment, or whether they remain another cycle of silence and uncertainty. Love isn't proven by feeling jealous. It's proven by having the courage to transform those emotions into trust, honesty, and real closeness. Now think about something else. Remember the last time an avoidant quietly did something thoughtful for you. Maybe they filled your gas tank, sent you music because they knew you were stressed, brought you your favorite coffee, or solved a problem before you even asked. When you thanked them, they probably brushed it off with, "It was nothing." But it wasn't nothing. For many avoidants, those quiet gestures are the safest way they know how to express affection. Speaking their feelings feels dangerously exposing. Doing something helpful feels much safer. Their actions become the language their words struggle to speak. Deep down, many learned that showing emotion invited discomfort, while completing tasks earned approval. Love often felt conditional. Maybe praise only came after achievement. Maybe affection followed responsibility instead of simply existing. Over time, they absorbed a powerful belief. Being useful is safer than being vulnerable. Caring through actions feels manageable. Saying, "I love you," "I need you," or "I miss you" feels far more frightening. So instead of speaking from the heart, they quietly serve, hoping their actions communicate what their words never learned to say. As they grow older, that pattern doesn't simply disappear. It follows them into adult relationships. Instead of expressing emotions openly, they often express them through helpful acts. They smooth over tension with favors instead of feelings. That isn't usually manipulation. It's a coping strategy they've practiced for years until it became automatic. If you pay attention, you'll notice something else. They rarely make a big deal out of these thoughtful gestures. In fact, they often dismiss them as unimportant. That isn't always humility. Sometimes it's protection. If they openly acknowledged the emotional meaning behind what they did, they'd also have to acknowledge what they were feeling.
It's safer if you notice the action but never ask about the emotion that inspired it.
You'll also see a pattern in when these acts of service happen. They often appear during moments that would normally call for emotional conversation. After an argument, on a difficult day, or during an important milestone, someone with secure attachment might sit beside you and say, "Tell me what's going on. I'm here for you." An avoidant may quietly fix something that's broken, solve a problem, or bring you something you need instead. Their care is genuine, but the silence surrounding it tells its own story. It raises an interesting question about what love really looks like. Throughout history, many philosophers have argued that love is proven through actions rather than words. There is truth in that. Caring behavior has tremendous value, but actions without emotional openness can leave the other person feeling uncertain. You can receive countless thoughtful gestures and still ache for one honest conversation. A relationship can be full of kindness while still feeling emotionally incomplete. So what do you do when you recognize this pattern?
Start by seeing their effort for what it is. Don't dismiss it. Their actions often represent sincere care rather than empty obligation. Accept those moments with appreciation. Thank them. Positive experiences help teach their nervous system that closeness doesn't always lead to danger. At the same time, don't stop there if emotional communication matters to you. Gently create space for both action and conversation. You might say, "I really appreciated what you did for me. It made me feel cared for. I'd also love to know what was going through your mind when you thought of me." You're offering them a safe path from behavior into honesty.
Some people will slowly walk across that bridge. Others simply can't. Your responsibility is learning the difference between someone who's gradually learning vulnerability and someone who remains emotionally unavailable despite repeated opportunities. If you're someone with avoidant attachment, remember this: acts of service are a beautiful expression of love, but they shouldn't become the only language you speak. Healthy relationships need both actions and honest words. The habit that once protected you may now be limiting the depth of your closest connections. Every thoughtful gesture creates another opportunity to practice something even harder. Let your actions be followed by your voice. Vulnerability will always feel uncomfortable at first, but courage isn't waiting for fear to disappear. Courage is choosing connection even while your hands are still shaking. Love hidden inside responsibility is still love. But when honesty joins those actions, affection becomes something your partner can truly understand instead of something they have to interpret. Have you ever noticed another strange pattern? The avoidant who seemed distant suddenly becomes more available the moment you stop chasing. You create healthy space. You stop constantly initiating conversations. Your focus shifts back toward your own life. Then, almost unexpectedly, they begin showing up again. They message more often. They seem more interested. They pay closer attention. That isn't always random. For many avoidants, it's a deeply conditioned response to the possibility of losing someone important. Unlike securely attached people, they often experience closeness as emotional pressure. The more available you are, the more they feel expectations building. They worry about disappointing you, losing themselves, or becoming emotionally dependent. Their instinct is to create distance because distance feels safer than vulnerability. But once you stop pursuing them, the emotional balance changes completely. The distance they once controlled suddenly feels different. Instead of freedom, it begins to resemble loss. And loss activates fears they often don't realize they're carrying. Ironically, the very separation they created starts confronting them with the possibility that you might actually move on.
That's when your absence begins to feel real.
When you were always there,
They could unconsciously assume the connection would remain available whenever they wanted it. Once you step back, they discover that relationships aren't guaranteed. That realization awakens feelings they were successfully avoiding before. As a result, they often begin reaching out in small, cautious ways. Maybe it's a message saying they've been thinking about you. Maybe they react to something you shared online or find a simple excuse to reconnect. Those gestures are often their way of asking, "Are you still there?" without exposing themselves completely. This is where many people misunderstand healthy detachment. Detachment isn't about punishing someone or trying to force a reaction. Genuine detachment comes from choosing emotional balance. It's deciding that your peace matters just as much as the relationship.
when you stop carrying the entire connection by yourself, you naturally change the emotional dynamic. Suddenly, they can no longer rely on you to keep every door open. They have to experience the absence they once created. For many avoidants, that experience is deeply uncomfortable. They don't just notice it mentally, their nervous system feels it. The quiet they once depended on now forces them to confront emotions they've spent years avoiding. For the first time, they may wonder whether you'll still be there if they finally choose to come closer. Some won't. Some will respond by creating even more distance because facing vulnerability still feels too frightening. Others, however, begin asking themselves entirely different questions. Instead of wondering whether they miss you, they start wondering why they're so afraid of accepting the love they've always wanted. That's where genuine change begins. So if your healthy distance encourages someone to move closer, don't rush to erase the space immediately. Let that space reveal what constant pursuit never could. If they return with greater self-awareness, accountability, and consistent effort, not just temporary attention, you may finally be witnessing something different instead of another familiar cycle. Sometimes, stepping back isn't giving up on love. Sometimes, it's giving another person the chance to step forward by choice rather than by pressure. And that isn't manipulation. It's emotional maturity.